Welcome to the Durnami Threeview. I'm your host, Fast Empires, joined by Scorch and Arcadius. We're here to review the hottest releases that passed you by with one goal in mind, to tell you what's good and what's bad so you can save your time and your money. The review format is simple. We'll have 3 categories: gameplay, which is about mechanics; production, featuring your voice acting, your music; and story. How good exactly is that narrative arc? And then we'll round it up with our final thoughts. That's the format, guys, for Durnami Threeview. 1 game, 3 opinions. Let's get started. Today we're talking about Ghost of Tsushima, Sucker Punch's latest entry into, I guess, legendary status. This game was released back in August? September?
I don't know.
I don't even remember. It's been so long ago in the year of 2020.
It's been like 37 months ago in 2020 when this was released.
But after many months of putting it off, your favorite host, Fast Empires, finally completed the game. So we're here to talk about it before the 1.0 release or the expansion for Ghost of Tsushima drops.
Yes.
So let's get started.
First things first, the release date was July 17th, 2020.
It's been a while.
Yeah. Also, boy, that intro was produced. Thank you.
You are welcome. I'm about to add that to my credits, by the way.
Producer? Yeah,
Vast
absolutely.
Empires.
Go for it. I won't even be mad.
Oh, so what was our first one? Gameplay?
Gameplay and mechanics. 'Cause it's been a while. I know that we've been playing Ghost of Tsushima on and off for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But let's go back to that apparent July day when it dropped and we all 3 were playing together. And let's go from there.
Separate, but together.
Theme for 2020, yet again. So, as far as the game itself goes, the gameplay, I think, is very well paced. It never makes you feel like you are overwhelmed by a ton of mechanics. They do a very good job of spacing that out so you know what goes where, how to use, this thing versus that thing. How do you want to play this and that? And it also, I guess this is more of it could be a gameplay thing, I guess. It really sets up the bad guy so that you want to, grind him into dust with all your super skills later.
Yes. I really enjoyed how, even though it is a samurai story, and so you're primarily playing with or not a samurai story, but like a sword story, it gives you a really wide variety of playing the game how you want to play the game. So if you want to be a big and bold hero and walk into the camp and challenge the entire camp to a duel, you can do that. If you want to super sneak around and stab everybody in the back with your short sword, you can do that. They give you a whole bunch of different skills and options for like that kind of gameplay, where you'll have your stealth gameplay. So you'll have your firecrackers, and you'll have your wind chimes to distract enemies. You'll have a smoke bomb, or you can just set it to distract enemies. To save yourself, you have a kunai, which came in handy a whole lot during my gameplay. And then if you want to like sit back and snipe, you have your bow and arrow. You can sit back. I gave you some perks and options for that too. But the thing that I think one of the reasons why I personally enjoyed, for the most part, playing the samurai, like leading into that gameplay side, is because they had the different sword stances, and then the standoff mechanic.
That was very clever. I think the way that they kept it simple, 4 stances, 4 quick select control buttons, so you don't have like 8 or a big long list of all these weird, extremely scenario specific stuff. So you've got 4 basic enemy types, 4 basic stances, and you can just switch in between. That's not to say that you can't use some of those stances on other enemies. I've done it. a lot by accident, but it's just not as effective, but it still absolutely works. So even then, you've got a little more fluidity with how you want to engage and continue your engagements throughout different encampments and groups of people,
I will
mixed
say,
in with all your other ghost weapons too.
I will say that using a different stance on a character that is susceptible to another stance does work after the game tells you this is not the correct stance. Switch to this stance now.
The only time that is a serious problem is a duel. If you get stuck on the wrong stance entering a duel, it will just freaking bullhorn right in your face until you change to the appropriate stance, and then it'll let you do the duel. I think that's the only thing I don't like about it.
It did that to me out in the open wild too.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know if I just got really good at ignoring it or if I'm that good at stance manipulation.
Oh, no.
But but I really don't remember that much. But Arcadius, you mentioned duels. Talk about that mechanic, because that was something I felt was really clever in terms of like the game variety that you had in Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, so the duels basically provide you a very one-on-one, little more of a visceral fight rather than just kind of chopping through a bunch of normies at a bunch of different campsites. But your duels really only ever consisted of two different, excluding the boss, it really only consisted of two different types of either a shield enemy or a sword enemy. And so you really only picked one or two of the stances for the entirety of the duel, but you had to, each person you dueled throughout the game had slightly different styles of play, slightly different combinations of unavoidable, or I should say parryable attacks, depending on what kinds of weapons they had, what kind of, distances you were from them, or proximities, positions, how you reacted to if you were in the middle of a chain. Sometimes enemies had chain interrupting moves that you had to either stop your chain short to dodge it or just take the hit. So they did a really good job in terms of making every one of your duels feel unique. All the enemy stances, all the ways that they went about, executing the duel were all different. So they had the nice thing about them is they didn't feel repetitive. It's not like, oh, time to duel, and it was like the same exact duel, just skinned with a different character. Every single one of the duels was different. Sometimes they were very little differences. Like, for instance, when you fought all the different Straw Hat guys across the second area, they all had very similar styles, but there were a couple of heavy moves and quick moves that were different between all of them. So they did a really good job in terms of keeping it diverse, and you didn't get bored. And a lot of games sometimes don't put in the effort to do that. They just have one mechanic, they reskin it, put it in a bunch of different locations, and you just have to do them, kind of grind through them. So I really enjoyed that about the duels.
Yeah, man, it was absolutely great.
Scorch, did you find any of them memorable duels, or did it feel repetitive to you?
No, I found myself enjoying every single duel that I was a part of. I felt like in my first playthrough, I felt like I was challenged, and that even if I didn't win, I knew that I would be able to defeat whatever duelist was set in front of me. In the second playthrough, I destroyed every single duelist I was a part of.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
In the first one, you're like sweating every single sword swing, and in the second one, you're like, why was I so bad in the beginning? This is ridiculous. Why is this so easy right now? And that really speaks to the game's pacing and difficulty curve, that it is not so incredibly hard in the beginning that people stop playing, but it it does ramp up, and you do gain skill regardless of what like play style you choose, and it shows if you go back and play it again.
And they do get more difficult. Yeah, I think one of the things I remember having a hard time with the first time was that you can't just button spam. As much as people love to do that, and that might get you like 80% of the way there, you actually have to execute at least just a couple of clever parries or dodges or something of the like in order to beat most of those duels. So that was... And the other thing that super helps is being able to change your armor and charms mid-battle. That is super helpful in case you needed an advantage that you forgot to equip, or you're like, crap, this guy does a lot of damage, I'm going to put my samurai outfit on or something like that, Gosaku or whichever you're wanting. Or, man, I'm getting hit a bunch, I'm going to totally put this charm on so I get resolve every time I'm struck. Like, well, you know, you could cater it. So, and you didn't have to like, oh crap, well, I already you didn't have to lock in whatever you had on when you entered the duel like some games will do. So it's very fluid. Pick and choose exactly what you want, how you want it, when you want it, and you're not held back by story points in the game.
Yeah. To go back just a tiny bit and still talk about challenge for just, this is my last thing on challenges. If you wanted to like draw a comparison to difficulty in other games, the closest idea that I would have to these kinds of duels, or most recent in my memory, would be fighting the Valkyries in God of War, and I would say that the Valkyries are much more difficult.
Yes, I was about to say, like, dear Lord, man, that's a steep comparison. Yeah, I will agree.
You will have fun. In the first playthrough, you will be challenged, but it's not insurmountable, and you're not going to be sweating it.
Well, I'm going to push us forward just a little bit because Arcadius mentioned the armor system, and that's, I think, one of the mechanics in the game. Like, there's two parts of it. Like, that's an actual mechanic of the game, and then there's the aesthetic part, which we'll talk about later, or we can talk about now, actually. But how did you guys like feel about the armor system in the game? How you had like... I can't even remember how many you have at the end of the game.
You have quite a few.
But I feel like you have a pretty wide variety, and it actually felt like they did specific things. And while there were a couple that I kind of stayed with until you get your ghost armor, I liked using them all at some point. Like I've used them all at some point. And there were a couple more that, like the Traveler's attire I used a lot in the early game just to clear the fog of war from the map. I liked I almost called him Hoboken. The oh gosh, is that the Kensei armor? Kensei armor.
The one where you end up getting a wolf skin at maximum upgrade on the back?
Yes.
Yeah, that one's Kensei.
And
I just like the hat.
Course, look, I used to have on everything.
Super slick.
That's
hat.
exactly what I was going to say. I only use like two armors, and it was the Samurai Clan armor and the Ghost armor, just about exclusively. But I would upgrade everything to get them hats, man.
That even goes for Tadayori, which I never used that armor because it looked like garbage, and I was not all about the bows. I did not like it. I
actually really like the Tadayori armor because the color combinations, not necessarily the patterns, although there are a couple that I really like, but the color combinations were amazing. And they had the crane bow. I think it's the crane bow, which matched the Tadayori armor that had like the bluish, or like a bluish and purplish and maybe even a mauve in there coloring, which I really liked. And then I just put the Kensei armor on hat on it, and I was good to go. I was shooting arrows at everybody from a distance, like plucking off the harder targets for me, and then I would move in. And that's how I played it.
Speaking of like archery combat, did you guys ever use that like time slow mechanic or anything like that?
I did a little bit, and I did it towards later game because it was one of the last things I upgraded because I never really
Same.
saw a need for it. And basically, it just gave me a little extra timing confidence to just sprint towards a group of people, and I could like quick draw the people in the back. Then I could instantly kunai the people in the front, and then I would just mow through the rest. Like if I wanted to get through a bunch of people really fast, that would become helpful. Or the other place I ended up using it a lot was hunting boars and bears for skins because the boars run around and they were kind of ornery to try and nail after you spook them. The slowdown mechanic helps to be able to nail all three of them.
All right. So it has its utility.
I think it did.
I never used it. I don't really like when games implement like a slowdown mechanic for shooting. I understand why they're there, and I know that people enjoy that kind of thing. It's just not really my cup of tea. And also, the way that I used the bow in Ghost of Tsushima meant that I didn't ever have to think about slowing down time because I was never in a situation where I had to think fast because I was always that sneaky motherfucker that would hide out in the tall grass and just like
Okay,
pop all the archers, pop all the hawks, and then walk around and do my stabby stab.
I will
wanted.
admit there's only
Step, step.
a single instance in the whole game. It was late game. The only time I legitimately used the slowdown mechanic to save my bacon is I went to throw some kunai and I was out. Then I swapped to my sticky bombs and I was still out. And then I slow motioned the guy as he was like, oh my god, he had to have been like 3 feet from me, and there was 3 guys charging me at once. So I was able to slow mechanic 2 of them and then take out the 3rd one. That's the only time it saved my bacon.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I just kind of used it recreationally for hogs.
Recreationally. Oh man, that's great. Well, we touched on it a little bit. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about like crowd fighting mechanics and AI?
Oof.
Because there are a few things that we can talk about there, like how usually in a lot of games where you have a crowd fight, it's you and then there's this ring of dudes that you will inevitably end up killing, but there are only like 2 guys that are fighting you at any one time. But in this game, all of them will stab you.
Oh yeah. However many that see you is the number of people that will run over to you. Now, once they bunch around you, they did actually physically limit the number of people that can make an attack on you, and I like how they did that because in real life there's only so much space around a person to swing a weapon at them. So you can only get attacked by a certain number of people in your immediate arm's length proximity around your character, but you could still be swarm surrounded by like 12 people.
Yeah.
And just totally get a beat down. And as soon as you kill one guy, someone's there to replace him and stab you in the eyes. But
in that swarm, though, it's not like discernibly 2 people that you have to worry about. It's all of them depending on where you are in that swarm.
Yes. And I will admit, based on the enemy type you fight, you could have distance people that shoot at you from afar the entire time you're fighting the up close melee people. So you can end up having a whole lot of people attack you all at once to the point you can't do anything.
Yeah.
But one of the things I noticed about the difficulty multiplier as far as fighting in groups between the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd areas is you could get the same number of people around you, but the amount of time that they would stand next to you before that they would engage a swing shortened in time as you moved up the area. So if you got surrounded at the
Really?
initial area, it wasn't a death sentence immediately. So I did like how they basically kept the programming and the enemy mechanics exactly the same. The only variables they adjusted were attack speed time and damage.
And enemy health.
Well, yeah, and enemy health. Well, as far as like your immediate effect to you from the enemies is two main variables that they would change, but everything else stayed the same. So it was still the same amount of chaos that you could have, the same amount of oh shit that you could have in a given scenario, but as you got better, they ratcheted things up a little tougher to keep pace with you getting better at the game.
Yeah, and it felt like you earned those moments. To me, at least, it felt like you really earned those moments.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed the difficulty curve because it felt like there may have been a wall to climb, but there wasn't a wall to stop me. And even if, like, when I put the controller down for several weeks and came back and found out that I could not stand off anymore, all it took was me to, going back to the first map for a little bit and fighting, and then it all came back to me,
Yeah, where
then
things are a little slowed down, get your timing down a little, and then you speed it back up.
Mm-hmm. It felt really good.
I tell you what, though, nothing makes you feel like a god more than back-to-back-to-back perfect parries. Oh, my goodness. Oh.
Shing, shing, shing. So we focus on combat a little bit. I'm going to take us just on a little side route real quick to talk about the exploration side of the game, because combat was definitely a very enjoyable part, and there's a lot of mechanics and systems involved with that. But there was also gameplay mechanics and systems that were involved in the exploration of the game, which I found to be enjoyable, and it felt way less like Breath of the Wild than I thought when I first saw the state of play where they highlighted or featured Ghost of Tsushima. There was during that initial playthrough when you're on your horse and you're talking to him, and or you come down the mountain and you're running around. I had just a little bit of just a smidge of Breath of the Wild remembrances. But the exploration was a huge part of the game that I really enjoyed. So, what did you guys think?
All right, let me start off with the statement. Those yellow birds are dumb.
Those yellow birds were evil. Okay.
And honestly, out of all the things I witnessed in the game, they were the most derpy in-game item or thing that would not know how to fly around a stalk of bamboo and would phase themselves through rocks and back up again while maintaining flight position.
Yeah.
And take you directly into enemies.
If there was anything that I could say was buggy about the game, it was those goddamn yellow birds.
Yeah. I don't mean dumb in that I didn't like the mechanic. I thought the idea of wildlife leading you to shrines and vanity pieces and stuff like that was really, really cool. I like the pathfinding on the birds was dumb. And
now let's talk about the pathfinding on our favorite. Oh no, sorry, not to finish that thought. Sorry.
Oh, we can go to the foxes if you want.
Yeah, because that was really good.
The petable forest life. Honestly, those things were super hard to find by themselves. There's only a couple times that okay, well, there's a fox over there. Let me actually try to find the shrine on my own. Nah, man, they were tucked away in all kinds of corners. They were really difficult to try and find on your own.
Yeah.
You end up having to go under a rock and then climbing the rock and then go down the other side of the rock and then you turn around and it's there. And it's how did I not see it?
Yeah. I only ever stumbled across a couple of them on their own without finding the fox first. And the
only ones those were the big open ones at the beach. When there's nothing there except one big rock.
One of them was I was derping around and climbing on some rocks and then fell off a rock into a little shrine area. But
he's watching out for you.
Once you figure out how those foxes work, when you find a fox den, you can pretty much pick out, okay, it's going to be right there. But if you're not looking for a shrine, if you're not looking for a fox, you would probably never find one.
Yeah, those were pretty good. All the little elements that you could find, whether they be the little haiku mats, the fox, the birds, or the pillars of honor, I think is what they were called, for your new sword skins. I thought those were all pretty dispersed evenly. You didn't have weird concentrations of them. Or yeah, and the hot springs too. You didn't have weird concentrations of them. When you were in an unfamiliar area, you pretty much had an idea that, okay, one of these things is somewhere around here.
Yeah.
So you always had something to look forward to, and there was enough diversity of it across the map that you weren't just, finding a string of fox dens or finding a string of, hot springs and stuff. It was pretty well placed.
Well,
and
let's talk
some people
a
who
little
didn't care about the maps could explore and find all that stuff.
Let's talk a little bit about one thing that we have not spoken about that I enjoyed, which was the bamboo strikes.
Oh, yeah.
Those were interesting.
I like the little button patterning that they did with them. It's not overly complicated, but it is just enough for your fingers to spaghettify sometimes and get all tangled together while you're doing all those.
Am I the only one who slightly cheated and would turn my controller sideways so I could have access to all the buttons with two hands?
No, I never.
There's only
did that.
one or two. The pattern was so awkward. It was basically like a different button every single one. Like there were no repeatings on one or two of my bamboo strikes. So I had to quickly use both hands. I couldn't just do it with one.
Well, the only left-handed one was L1. All the others were face buttons.
Yeah. But for some reason, there's a couple of those I just straight up could not get unless I contorted my controller to try and get.
I thought that they were
So-
really cool, and they broke up gameplay just enough for you to gain a breather before you toss yourself headlong into another Mongol camp. It's a nice lull.
I really like those too. And this is from someone who never when it came to fighting games, I was terrible at your Mortal Kombats and your Street Fighters, which actually, in my memory, use those type of button presses, as opposed to Soul Calibur, which was more directional based. But I was doing them, and I was like, "Holy shit!" It felt like the first time I learned how to I went into my business algebra class or whatever and realized I actually knew what I was doing. And I felt some sense of exhilaration. I was like, oh, this is the pride and accomplishment that EA wanted to give you, but it's real here. It's real.
Oh man. You can't listen to us and not expect an EA dig, right?
No. I mean, they make it so easy. But when we're talking about other things that kind of break up the pattern, like the gameplay, and giving you that variety, that was a lot of fun. I super enjoyed, really enjoyed the shrine puzzles.
Yeah.
Which are basically, platforming features of the game. But some of them were just really fun to do.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorites was one where the shrine ended up being or I should say the one that kind of surprised me the most as an interesting setup was you fell into this big lake, and the shrine and it's in the shape of a crescent moon, and you could see the shrine up on one point of the crescent moon, but you had to start at the other point and completely go around the entire little cove, slowly winding up through all kinds of weird topsy-turvy up-down type things to get to the shrine. It was very colorful.
It was great.
Yeah. It was just another one of those things that really highlighted the beauty of the game, the beauty of the landscape and the color patterns and choices that they put in the game. And then just the ingenuity of the team saying, hey, let's give them something that's still challenging, but less. Well, I was about to say less life-threatening, but you could fall. You could fall.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But, that just to shake things up a bit.
Yeah. We'll give the players an ability to take screenshots that don't have any blood in them.
Yes.
Speaking of photo mode, do we want to talk about photo mode?
Photo mode. Yes,
Get
I think.
photo mode.
Woo, the best photo mode. I'm really thinking that's the best photo mode.
It's really good.
I
I think
honestly
it's one of the
thought-
most robust ones that I have ever used. And
They
I
put
think
just enough detail in it to really have a lot of options, but didn't make it so cumbersome that you would spend an inordinate amount of time to get what you wanted.
Yeah. I think the closest that, like, the next runner-up would probably be the photo mode in Assassin's Creed, but it's a distant runner-up compared to this one.
This is the first photo mode that made me want to use the photo mode. And in the hours of playthrough that I have, I'm reasonably sure that a third of that is just me in photo mode. And like Arcades was saying, like, it's not so cumbersome. They give you a lot of options there, but they're pretty straightforward. So but at the by the same token, you get out of it as much as you put in. So if you are someone who really understands like some of the basic parts of photography, you could do more with like the focal distance and the aperture and the roll and the all that kind of stuff. But if you're someone who is like me and just knows that the best filter on there was maple,
Oh yeah, maple.
you just slap some maple on it, tilt your camera to the side, and then put the Ghost of Tsushima logo on the left or right, and then you're good to go.
I will fight you about that because that Ghost of Tsushima stamp does not belong anywhere on one of those screenshots.
Nah, I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah, I couldn't stand the text.
It's the
just-
game.
I needed
just
clean,
grody.
crisp.
It's the game.
I'd like to take this screenshot and then put a
Match.
stamp on it that's like 40% of the screen in the middle of the action. That's exactly
Yeah,
where
there's
I
a couple
want it.
of my good shots. I was like, well, this would be a good to commemorate, and then I was like, but my entire scene is now consumed by this goddamn logo.
Yeah.
So to hell with it.
And even if
All right,
it
well,
were
I'll give you-
smaller, it's like wearing a nice, crisp, clean, freshly starched white business shirt and then going out for lunch and getting mustard on it.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Barbecue
I mean,
sauce.
that's a nice like analogy, but no. We're gonna cage match this. That's how I was talking to you about like we need another segment. That's it. Cage
Okay,
match.
the cage match? Okay.
All right, we'll
Cage
cage
match.
match that.
No idea how that's going to work, but I'm
I
all
don't
I
for
will
it.
either,
admit
but,
though, how about the number, or I should say the quantity of different colors, hats, headbands, sword skins? I mean,
Yeah.
I thought there was quite a few.
Yeah.
Well, I think that kind of pushes us into the next category, which is production. And under there, I'm housing like all of the amazing fiddly bits, like
The fiddly bits.
the fiddly bits, but like your items, the armor for Ghost of Tsushima, like all of the armors, the music, which we didn't even really talk about the flute, but like the music, voice acting, all of that kind of stuff that came together to create the trappings of the game.
Yeah. Dang, I don't even know where to start there, but Arcadius brought up all the little headbands and stuff. I guess that would be a good spot to start off at, right?
Sure.
So I liked what they did, even though I only used a certain amount of headbands because most of the masks you got were cracked and broken, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Which is like a design choice, and I mean that's fine, but I'd really like the ability to have an option
Clean
to
and crisp.
repair it or something like that. Have a clean version. And I also liked that is where they put all of the nods and Easter eggs to their previous games. So like on the top of one of the pagodas was Headband of the Second Son, which is an Infamous game, which is the series that they worked on before that. And there is a trophy associated with a series of armors and skins that is a nod to Sly Cooper, which is also a game that they made way back when. I thought that
I
was
honestly
really
would
cool.
have never gotten that trophy if I didn't look it up, because I never played any of those previous games. So that's definitely a serious Easter egg when they're like, all right, you need to totally outfit yourself to look like Sly Cooper and we'll give you a trophy. Like that's really out there in left field.
Yeah.
And that's taking it way back because there hasn't been a Sly Cooper game since early PS3, maybe? Or mid
Yeah.
PS3?
I'll look it up right
Wild.
quick and get back to you.
Yeah, please do, because honestly, out of the mascots, I consider Sly Cooper, Jack and Daxter, and Ratchet and Clank to be the three mascots of the Sony PlayStation, especially the Sony PlayStation 2 era.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, the only one that's still alive is Ratchet and Clank. And I personally liked the Sly Cooper story. I just had more fun with that because you're a raccoon and you're having heists. Like
Yeah.
it was so much fun.
So
But, yeah.
the first Sly Cooper release was September 23rd, 2002. And the last release was February 5th, 2013. So they went for 11
Oh
years.
my God. That's when I graduated. What? Oh my God. Wow. Okay. So yeah, it's been a hot minute since a Sly Cooper game. So this was a definite throwback for the outfit configurations, if you will.
Yeah. But if you played them, they did put the little morsels in the titles so that you could pick them out.
They did.
I bet the first guy that put on all of those references was just like, yeah, I'm Sly Cooper, guys, was like super happy that popped up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So we very briefly mentioned like the different types of armor that we had, but can we just as a personal favor to me, talk about the aesthetics of those armors? And Scorch, I know there's some that you particularly hated, like Hoboken, but how amazing the costuming was for the samurai armor.
It was great. I loved it.
In terms of aesthetics, if I almost wish to a degree I could pick the abilities separate from the aesthetics, so you could pick your gameplay style and look the way you wanted to. But I understand why they combined some of that stuff to keep it a little, forced play with the given way you look. But that Gosaku armor, oh yes, that was my favorite.
I was just about to ask, what is your favorite? So, Arcadius, you like the Gosaku armor?
The Gosaku and the black guy. Oh.
I was gonna say not counting Ghost armor.
Not counting Ghost armor.
Scorch, what about you?
Oh man, I really enjoyed like the middle versions, the second iterations of a lot of the armors, and if I had to pick like one of the ones that I got, it might be the middle iteration of the Sakai clan armor.
That was going to be my response.
Or like the middle version of the samurai clan armor. I tended to shy away from big, huge, gigantic sets of armor. And as just like a personal choice, it didn't really have anything to do with how they looked per se, aside from all that itchy hay on the Kinsei armor and the like gigantic threadbare overcoat thing that they threw over the ghost armor in the last iteration, I was not.
That was kind of odd.
Yeah, I didn't really like that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Seemed a little out of place, just a little.
For myself, it was the Sakai clan armor. Of course, I put the Kinsei hat on it and put it in black with the gold on it. Styling. And then I was surprised that I enjoyed the look of the Tadayori armor as much as I did. But they had some really great colors for those that I really liked. And then, of course, I would just put the black Kinsei armor hat on top of that and go about my business and shoot things from a distance. There was one I kind of wish that you could have brought into the game in some kind of way, which was the broken armor.
Yeah, I really would have liked that to have been like an actual viable set with its own attributes and stuff, but it just stayed broken the whole time.
Yep.
Yeah.
I really liked
So
the
you would
like
remember.
asymmetrical like single shoulder armor kind of thing on it. I thought that was really cool, but
Torn and frayed, actually
Yeah.
worn.
I would have liked it to be a clean version of that rather than a perma-damaged one, but beggars can't really be choosers, and I'm not sitting there on the design committee at Sucker Punch, so
Yeah.
we can only say so much.
Yeah. And they honestly did give us a lot to choose from.
They did.
If you sat there and think about it, they gave us a lot to choose from.
Okay, I've got a question regarding wardrobing.
Ask away.
Did you guys ever unironically choose to run around with a taco hat on?
No.
No.
I
Couldn't
couldn't
do
bring
it.
myself to do it. I
me
was like,
neither.
I cannot match this with anything I like. I will not run around this glorious map like a dinkus. And I went back to my more sleek and swap outfits.
Yeah, I don't
I
blame you.
tried it. And even when I was like running the Tadayori armor, I would like every once in a while I wear like the tiny hat.
Mhm.
But
Oh, that was
I couldn't
cute.
do
Yeah,
the other
I
one.
remember like passing that up through an upgrade chain. I was like, oh, that's
Like
kind of
that-
funny looking.
That little
and then
like
that was all I ever got.
minister-looking hat that they
Yeah,
had.
like,
Yeah, with
Just the
that had
little
the
bitty
string
hat.
across it to tie underneath
Yeah,
here. Yeah.
yeah.
I was like, I would wear a tiny hat every once in a while. But yeah, but I
you
like
wearing my
that.
tiny hat.
So let's get to one of the big production values of this game, for me at least, which was the voice acting.
Yeah. Okay, do yourself a favor.
Yeah.
Play it in Japanese first.
Yep.
I think
I
the
would
Japanese
suggest that.
voices are top notch. It might bother you a little bit that the little lip flaps for the characters are matched to the English voices, and honestly, I kind of thought a little bit about that. I floundered around about that for a little bit, but after a little while, you just don't even notice. And it's really a great addition that they.
That
did
is not to
so well.
say that the English voices are bad, though.
No,
because
absolutely
I'm
not.
playing my second playthrough on the English voices, and they are still really good.
Yeah.
But I still think there's that extra bit of inflection and
Immersion.
Yeah.
that immersion that you really get a whole lot better if you play it with the Japanese with subtitles.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You don't got to go crazy black and white cinema mode, but just
Although that
play it
is an
Japanese
option.
voices.
Vass, did you ever play it that way? I know you wanted to.
No, I didn't, and it's mainly because I put the game down, and when I came back, I honestly didn't even think about it. But I should have maybe done the last battle, and we'll get to that when we talk about the story. But I maybe should have done the last battle in black and white. I think that would have been really cinematic, and the way that this game was trying to go was to give you a truly cinematic gaming experience.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's so many goddamn rich colors in this game. I think black and white would be a disservice unless you played the game once already through.
Yeah. Well, there are also like giving you New Game Plus, so that's another option. We'll talk about that in a minute.
True.
I will just take a step back when we talk about the voice acting. The character models were mainly based on the English voice acting cast. And
Yeah.
so I know I mentioned a little bit about immersion, but on the opposite end of that, when you did play with the English version, and I only did it for like a couple of sequences when, I was like, let me just listen to it because I went straight in with the Japanese. So I was like, let me just listen to it and do some of these missions with the English voice acting. I feel like you really get you get a really good emotional pull,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that those actors are, are the faces. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I'm not articulating this really well, but like there was like some emotional weight I felt in some of those scenes.
Yeah, I agree with you. Did you see the little stream clip of the actor for the main character cheering when he saw his own butt get into the onsen?
Yes.
He's like, yeah. Wait, I don't know why I'm cheering about that. That's weird.
I
It's my
watched that
digibutt.
one. Oh, so we didn't even talk about Samurai Butt, but which was surprising but well done. It was a cute butt. But I also watched Jin's voice actor, whose name is escaping me right now, and I'll look it up in a second. I watched him after I played through to the end. Talk about, he did his own playthrough of the end, and he talked about his decision that he made at the end, which was really interesting to hear. So if you're curious about his thought process of what he chose during his actual playthrough, and I think he had a little bit of discussion about like how when he was voicing the scene, some of the things that were going through his head as well. It's pretty interesting. You can find it on his YouTube page.
Oh,
that's cool. So what's next? What do we want to talk about next?
Oh, sorry. His name. Wait, hold on. Real quick. So, Jin's English voice actor is Daisuke Tsuji.
Okay.
And his Japanese voice actor is actually, I don't know if oh gosh. Okay, I think that's the English. Anyway, Kazuya Nakai is the Japanese voice actor who voice acts my favorite swordsman in the entire world at this point in time, and that's Roronoa Zoro from One Piece.
Yeah, that's pretty much the fun fact for voice acting.
Sorry, Vas.
I don't care. That's you.
So does that bring us into story as the final category? Unless we're still got a little more to munch on.
I mean, we can move into the story because ultimately all the production things tie into the story.
Yeah.
And so while we're here, let's just answer that question. How good is that narrative?
I think it's pretty good.
Solid. Yep. Would agree. I think what I liked about this game is that per the period and per the, purpose of the game, your protagonist and the antagonist and all the combinations of the different things that lead up to the final decisions at the end of the game, everything stays serious. And they didn't try like really hard like some games to throw in some weird comedy relief or breakup. And I'm gonna kind of like exclude Kenji because he was not really funny. He was like
he wasn't funny to you.
No,
I thought he was entertaining.
I think he was funny in his own right as an individual character, but it wasn't a type of comedy that was injected so hard to try and break up the serious tone of the overall tone of the game, if that makes sense. So it's not like it wasn't a disheveling interruption of weird comedy that had no place. It was true to his character, only for his character at those few moments in time that you encountered it, and then the rest of the game was quite serious, and I honestly enjoyed it. There was a flow and a consistency to the entirety as you played all the way through. We're very deeply involved in the lives and livelihoods of other characters throughout the game, whether they were lesser NPCs or more of the bigger side quests along your main quests. They were well written and well done.
Yeah.
I enjoyed them a lot.
You know who's surprisingly well written and goes without a single line in the entire story is your horse.
No.
or whatever you
If that's the
decide
name
to
you
name
chose. Yes.
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
This
We
is
just chose the
a true
best
statement
name.
also.
So full
The quiet
spoiler.
cast member.
Full spoiler for people who haven't played. I don't know why you're watching this in the first place if you haven't played it, but at the end of the second act, your horse dies.
Yes. It
Not just
hurts.
like dies, like painfully,
Yeah.
slowly getting you to safety dies.
Yeah. And I do believe that is why Vaz put the game down for a while.
It is the biggest reason, yes.
It hurts.
Listen, it hurt. It hurt, yeah.
Your companion through thick and thin. You've been through a lot by that point, the end of the second act.
And I really leaned, just personally real quick, I really leaned into the horse as well. Like there were other horses that you can ride around on, but I almost always called my horse, and I talked to him, and I was like, "I'm sorry, Nobu," when I like threw myself off of a cliff one day. Like I was talking to my horse. I got connected to the horse.
Yeah.
That's not the only reason I put the controller down, but it was like one of those like, okay, well, yeah, I can put my controller down right now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not emotionally ready to continue this.
Like, as far as emotional ups and downs for that game, the death of the horse is on top, and in second place is killing your uncle.
Yeah.
Or like saving him, depending on which way you go.
Yeah. But even having to make that choice, I thought the progression of Jin's story was just really well done. I think if you think about like where you start, and when you're underneath that guy's body, and you have that flashback to what was it? Is it a flashback to killing the bear?
Yes.
Or is it a flashback to
the first one
fighting your
him,
uncle? I forget which one it is.
Was it the one where they were tracking bandits?
Okay.
I thought it was tracking a bear and you got attacked by a bandit.
Yeah, that's what it was. That one it was. And
yeah.
They're like, you have no honor as a bandit. Strike him down, Jin. That kind of thing.
Yeah, so going from there to, and then with the gameplay mechanics of, we didn't even really talk about the technique system, but going through and increasing your legend, unlocking techniques, becoming a more efficient and stealthy assassin, to get to the point where you are fighting, you're talking to your uncle underneath that tree. Felt like a fully realized journey. And I got a little emotional.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna kill my uncle, and this sucks.
It was a little chin quivery when your uncle is like, let us sit underneath the leaves and write one last haiku. And you're like writing a haiku as you know full well you're about to kill this fool.
Someone is about to die. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh man. The way they did that was very good.
That's part of the serious tone of the entire game. And I'm not gonna lie, there are some very lesser side stories that were just freaking heartbreaking.
Oh, let's talk about the side stories.
Sure.
Some of those, one of the side stories were one of the ones that got me was the guy was trying to find his family and he couldn't find his family. And what ended up happening was that he had, paid to this merchant to try and get his family to safety to escape the oncoming onslaught of the
Mongols.
The Mongols. And the merchants just took advantage of him, stole his money, and then killed his wife and son by the bay. And you find a toy and you bring it back to him, and little moments like that, oh my god, he just lost everything thinking they got away to safety. It's really gut wrenching for a lot of different scenes.
Yeah, definitely.
And of course, let's not forget when the fox came to ask for help because the entirety the bamboo forest had been wiped of foxes and hung on a butcher pole. So that was pretty freaking awful.
Yeah.
That was definitely one of those. I'm killing every goddamn mogul in a 20-mile radius.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, that just lots of other little stories that weren't part of the main quest. They weren't even part of the sub quests to the characters that play through your main quest. Just no name, out of your way NPCs that just have a snapshot in time or a moment in their life that either changes their lives forever or ends it, and they're just very heartfelt side stories.
Yeah. And they really fit the time too. Like it's not
Yes.
one of those things where they feel like they threw this in just to get emotional value. They really tied it into the feeling of the whole story that they're trying to tell. And that's really welcome right now, I think. It's good storytelling that way. You're world building correctly.
Yes.
I know that we like we got a little overwhelmed by the constant anger and pain in Lady Masako's storyline, but
Yeah.
like it is a story of war and of another person who lost everything trying to, deal through that. And I found it like pretty interesting in that you couldn't stop her.
No.
At least for the first parts of the game. And it was a really interesting take on, like on a vengeance storyline. So
Yeah.
it got a little overwhelming sometimes, but I still thought that it was pretty good. And then there was the other like branching storyline.
Dude, with the monks. Let's talk about the monks.
Norio?
Was it Nori?
Yeah, Norio.
Norio.
That might
honestly
be
out
like
of the
one
main
of the most
stories,
brutal endings.
Yes. The end of his, I think out of the main side quests, I think his is the most brutal.
And you don't even get his until the second island, I think.
Yeah, the second act.
Second act is where you start interacting and doing all of Norio's stuff. And I think you finish it off in the third act, don't you? Yeah, you do. You absolutely do. Yeah, I remember now because you finish it by the snowy pagoda. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, his is much. I think out of all of them, Ishikawa's and what's her name's?
Masako?
Lady Masako. Their
Oh.
storylines are more like revenge driven, and Norio's is kind of juxtaposed against that. Like, I just want to help people. I just want to survive. I just want to try and keep people from being slaughtered. Like his storyline is a little more self-sacrificing, and then the way that it ends is just like, oh man, like, god dang.
Yeah, dude.
I think his hits harder than any of the other side stories, and that's good. Like that's just really excellent the way that they're differentiated and they don't feel samey at all.
Yeah, definitely.
And that they give you like these many, like there's the main narrative branch, but they have these additional like narrative branches that you can walk down, and then they have like the side quests that you can go and help people or harm people to increase your legends. It's like there's a lot in the game that is or there's a lot of activity in the game that is story driven, and I think really helps propel you through the game because you're kind of like, well, I have to see what happens next, or well, I really want to make sure such and such gets through this, so I want to see this, or I really just want this armor color, so I will finish this.
Pick your poison.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember in the beginning of all of Lady Masako's quests, in the beginning, I thought, oh my god, that's what's going on right now? Hold on. And then towards the end, I'm like, let's go. Let's rev it up. Let's do this. We're gonna murderize the countryside. Let's do this. And yes. It's great.
I think the only other real nod that I want to give, and I think it's a huge one though. So you had those narratives that are going on. You had those branching storylines that all come together to forward gen and make them go further. And those were driven in game. Like all of that stuff happened in the game engine.
Mm-hmm.
The epic tales, the story that the little storylines that they gave you for the epic were they called epic tales when you went to go get those?
Where you were like collecting armors and skills and stuff.
Yes. And you would fight like some kind of legendary boss.
Yeah.
I really liked how in game they kind of shifted and they gave you like more of an animated Japanese
like intro to it.
Like intro to it. So it's kind of like shadow puppets or wood cuttings. Like they did like just something really beautiful visually to kind of, or like, ink on a parchment. Like they did a bunch of different effects to make it very visually interesting to tell you the story about, this swordsman who could call down lightning, or this devil who came and who could, cut the wind with his such and such, all those different stories that they told.
Yeah.
I thought
it built
really
up the
cool
hype for the thing you're about to go get. So it wasn't just, okay, I'm going to go here, kill this guy, unlock a thing. Okay, I got it. No, they like, okay, well, this is the story. You are now going to go take part in this story or continue the legacy of this story and finish it. So they did a very good job of hyping up and introing, or I should say more like segueing into the actual action of going and finding these specific people or items or interactions.
They did a really good job. I think every single one of those the endings to those legendary quests capped it off very well.
Mm-hmm.
I think aside from the Gosaku armor, which is just kill some Mongols, walk into the area, pick it up.
I think the build up to that one was going and saving the farms to get the keys.
Yeah, no, it definitely
didn't feel like much of a build up.
Like thematically, the story behind the Gosaku armor and like why you had to do all of those things in order to achieve it was thought out, and it fit well within that little mini story. I'm saying like the end of it was, even if it did fit, it was not as impressive in my mind as like the guy that had the like unblockable technique or anything like that.
I see what you're saying there.
Or the kinds of missions where you had to go find certain areas based on the types of flowers that grew in the area to find the next clue that take you to your next place.
Yeah. Like a lot of
I'll
them,
admit, that's true.
A lot of those legendary stories were the closest you got in the game to like supernatural mythical things. And it was really cool. Like it built into legend. And that one, even if it was rooted in legend, it ended in a real way.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. Point made. What?
I don't really have anything else to comment on the story. I think it was rock solid. I think it was very well done. It was paced well. It was separated out and divided up well to spread your time out if you wanted to jump from one thing to the next while you're continuing the main story. I got really nothing bad to say at all about the story.
I think that and sorry to cut you off fast.
You're fine.
I think that the way that they built up the Mongol boss was it was good, but it was expected. Ever since Far Cry 3 hit it big with a really charismatic bad guy in video games, people have been kind of chasing that. And I mean, I totally understand why they built him up the way he did, and I think this was kind of by design. The larger feeling of antagonism that I got out of the game was your schism between you and your uncle rather than the urgent like hostility up front with the Mongols.
I'll agree. I honestly thought he was just like I'll get to you later, but God damn it, Uncle, you need to straighten up. Like that definitely was, and I think it's only more emotionally and physically tangible because you had an evolving interaction with your uncle for a longer period of time, and the Mongol leader was, you met him once, it kicked off your story, and then you finally met him again when you were OP and you defeated him.
Yeah.
Everything else in between was filled up with your uncle and those interactions that you had along the way.
Well, and I think that really is a point in Sucker Punch's favor for their ability to tell this relatively complex story. Like they had one main branch, they had multiple storylines in it, and it's all coming together to give you the story of Jin. And so the story of Jin isn't just Jin going to defeat the Mongols and saving Tsushima and ultimately saving Japan from the Mongol invasion. It's also like a journey of self-discovery and a journey of discovery. And that discovery is self-discovery. Who am I as a man if I am not a samurai? Because I, as a samurai, died on that beach that day, right? Who am I now?
Yeah.
And so you go with that. And you're the ghost. And then it's also, who am I in relation, since I am no longer a samurai, who am I in relation to my family and my family legacy? Who do I want to be? Like you're making all of these different decisions and you're like, and you're given these different options, like, to tell them. And I was significantly impacted by the story. And I think that they just did a great job, honestly.
Oh, so that actually reminded me, since to backtrack on side stories, when we were talking about which one was our favorite, Norio's was a bit of a jerker, but I honestly thought when you went back home and you met with your caretaker growing up and her dementia as you went with her journey and kind of saw her falling apart, and then finally she basically went to the top of that mountain area with you and she was talking to you as your father, man, that hit really hard. And even Jin as a character understood what was happening and just let it unfold. I think that, honestly, to me, I think that's one of the most powerful moments of his character development in the whole game. That moment right there.
Yeah, I think I'll agree with you there.
And that's just something I didn't even think about, and we're sitting here reviewing because there is so much going on in that game. But yes, returning to the Sakai clan lands and going through that,
getting your father's armor, reclaiming what was supposed to have been yours but was postponed, but now you've returned. You've already evolved as an individual by this time in the story, and you've reconnected with the nostalgia of the past, but realized it has truly come to pass, and it gets put to rest with I'm trying to remember her name. I don't remember it. But anyways, the caretaker lady that took care of you growing up, that was a seriously heartfelt moment.
I think
towards the end of her arc.
I think that was a really good juxtaposition between why you went there to get the armor and restore your clan's honor and fight for your clan, and then have a storyline that branched out of that is how to, without honor, kill your enemies with poison.
Yes.
I think that juxtaposition and how, just have them so close together like that and have it just plain as day, the differences in what you were doing, was a really good choice, the way they had it done.
And even more so, just for Jin's character, the realization that this is what you came back to claim, but it's not who you are anymore. And more of the fact that you have to kind of bury the past and take a step forward into the future to make what you want yourself to be. So I like you just kind of mentioned that the segue of how they tied that up and then launched you forward into being someone and acting completely different as Jin evolves as an individual. yeah, that's probably the most powerful coupling segment of the game that has the greatest turning point, if you will, that
Yeah.
propels you down the path that completes the rest of the game.
Yeah.
It was really good. Yep, that's all I got to say about the story. I think I'm run out of things.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we get to our final thoughts, really quick, I'm going to open up the table for any of our negative impressions or reviews. We very briefly mentioned some of the bugginess that with the birds pathing, but there are a couple of other like things that I felt were minor, but I wanted to know if you guys came across anything terrible. For me personally, it was getting on and off of ladders.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sometimes was tricky.
Or ledges.
Also, yeah, there's an occasional ledge. If you weren't just squared up just right, your character wouldn't actually grab on. And something that sort of irritated me halfway through the game was the fact that Jin had utterly perfect balance in everything he did. But they tried to alleviate this by, in one of the side quests, if you remember, he was going through and jumping around, and someone asked him, like, hey, don't fall. And he says, oh, don't worry. I've been climbing trees and doing stuff since I was like 5. But that little statement was basically supposed to tell you, oh, yeah, he's been doing this for so long, he's an expert. And don't worry about it. Like, but I was like, no, like, no, not enough. Like, I just so that's probably one of my only kind of strange mechanic peeves about the game was, like, I almost kind of thought that there are certain instances of the game where if they gave you the Tony Hawk style of like a balance bar that you had to like actually balance your way across not all the time, but like a couple of long areas, you could like actually control the balance instead of just being a perfect ninja. I think that'd have been a little better. But that's a pretty minor gripe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about you, Scorch?
There are a couple of things that I've got to say about this. One of them was the whole fighting a mismatched enemy against your stance thing, and them like literally pausing the game to tell you to, switch your stance to this. That got kind of annoying to me, especially when you're fighting a group of people that all have mixed weapons. So you're fighting one guy, and then somebody else approaches you, and you like hit attack, and Jin lashes out, and then the game pauses and says, "You're not using the right stance." Yeah, that's kind of annoying. There are some like ledge issues and ladder things that I didn't really like. I feel like when you were stealthing around, the enemy AI was kind of cheap and pretty easy to cheese if you wanted to.
And that's before you put on the different armors.
Yeah, that's before you put on all the different armors. And one of the things that I know we all talked about that is coming in their next update is armor loadouts.
Yeah, we mentioned that like hour 1 or hour 2.
Yeah, like where are my loadouts? Why do I have to keep changing this?
Yeah, it will be coming in the update that it will be dropping, I believe, on the 16th. But the game up until that point is without armor loadouts, meaning that if you wanted to change any of your talismans or charms or anything like that, you had to stop, pick out all the ones that you wanted, especially like if you're going from like free roam into a duel or something like that.
Yeah. Quite a few efficiencies you need to change up to make that as optimal as possible.
Yeah.
And honestly, I only ever changed I would keep a general setup. The only charms I changed were my scavenging charms switched over to perfect parry charms.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the only thing I got to the point that I toggled.
That's about what I did too.
Me too.
But that's changing, and really that's about the only gripes that I have.
Not significant.
Which is great.
All right.
I only crashed like once in the entire time that I played, and it was very unexpected.
Knock on wood, I never crashed.
Yeah, I haven't crashed yet.
It was very well optimized for the machine. It worked incredibly well. It was well thought out, and the combat was nice and tight.
The graphics were amazing.
Graphics were great. The photo mode was great. The things that you learned and picked up and all the skills and trinkets and items that you picked up felt correct for the character and a video game. You felt good all the way through the game, and even if you weren't thinking about it, you were getting better, and it's much more evident if you go back and play in the like another playthrough how good you became after that first playthrough. Very well done. Very well done.
And just to top it off, I would say that this game did, again, going back and reiterating on its progression of items, enemies, attacks, you getting better through the game. This game did a really good job of making you feel like a badass at every turn.
Yeah, it did.
It really did. So that feels like our final thoughts. Is there anything else that you want to wrap up before I ask you guys the big question?
I'm good.
What's the big question?
The big question is, would Durnami recommend you, the listener and or viewer, purchase and play this game?
100%. Yeah. Of course.
Would absolutely, no matter what platform you want to play it on, just get this game and play it. You will not regret it.
Your choices of
if
platform.
You take the time to sit down and actually play through the whole thing.
Your choices of platform, by the way, is PS4.
Or
I forgot this one wasn't bridged.
PS5, because they did announce that this game is being optimized for PS5. So if you can get your hands on one, you can also play Ghost of Tsushima on the PS5.
I'm feeling another playthrough.
Yeah. I would 100% also go on the line. Not even on the line. This is just like a slam dunk for Sucker Punch. It's a slam dunk for PlayStation fans. It's a great game. Highly recommend it. Before the big announcement that Sucker Punch dropped on us a few weeks ago, that they were going to release an 1.1 or Ghost of Tsushima Legends pack on us, which expanded the game, giving you new game plus. They're adding the loadouts like Scorch mentioned, so there's a little less toggling frustration. They're dropping a new horse, which maybe will survive.
Cooperative play.
Cooperative story modes or gameplay mode. And then there's new armor new armor dye merchant. So there's new ways to be fly and drip swag. And then they are giving you the 4-player mode. And they're going to drop a raid.
Yeah, there's a raid in there.
Oh yeah, almost forgot to say it's free. No DLC
yes,
purchase
all of
necessary.
this juicy new content is free.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Great time to pick it up and play. Great time. There's never a bad time to pick this game up.
No, anytime. Now, later, just pick it up. Just play it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You won't be disappointed.
I think that's about it. Vass, you want to carry us out?
I will do so. This has been Durnami Gaming's Threeview for Ghost of Tsushima. Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this review, hit that like button, comment, and subscribe to our channel. And you can find us across all social media platforms at Durnami Gaming. We'll talk to you next time.